On September 4, 2025, Bryan County, Georgia, woke to what seemed like a normal day at the new HGLA Battery Company plant, a $5.5 billion symbol of America's green energy ambitions. The sun rose over the sprawling facility, and workers streamed in, ready to power the future of electric vehicles in the United States. For many, it was a source of pride and hope, a sign that Georgia was at the forefront of a technological revolution. But the routine shattered as federal agents from ICE, HSI, and the FBI descended in a coordinated raid. Sirens pierced the morning calm, and the sight of law enforcement vehicles sent a wave of confusion and fear through the workforce. The plant, a beacon of modern manufacturing, became the epicenter of the largest immigration enforcement action of President Trump's second term. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the unfolding drama to a stunned nation. Agents moved swiftly, checking IDs and questioning hundreds of workers, most of them highly skilled South Korean technicians and engineers. The air was thick with uncertainty as employees tried to understand what was happening. Nearly 475 people were detained, sending shockwaves from Georgia to Seoul. Families and colleagues anxiously awaited news, while the world's media converged on Bryan County. Hyundai quickly clarified that the detained were contractors, not direct employees, but the distinction did little to ease the chaos. The company faced mounting questions about oversight and responsibility. Production halted, supply chains froze, and the plant's future was thrown into doubt. The economic impact rippled through local businesses and suppliers, threatening jobs and livelihoods. The raid was more than an enforcement action. It was a blow to a flagship U.S.-South Korea economic partnership. Tensions rose between the two allies as questions about trust and cooperation surfaced. For the workers, the American dream they were building turned into a nightmare overnight. Hopes for stability and opportunity were replaced by fear and uncertainty. The message was clear. Even the most high-profile investments were not immune to disruption. The promise of progress could be undone in a single morning. The local community and the world watched as uncertainty took hold. Parents, business owners, and officials all wondered what would come next. The dawn in Georgia marked the start of a crisis that would ripple far beyond the factory gates, challenging assumptions about security, investment, and the future of American industry. In the raid's aftermath, over 300 South Korean specialists found themselves in detention centers, facing deportation. Many were caught off guard, having arrived in the country with the expectation of contributing their expertise to a major international project. These were not undocumented laborers, but highly trained technical experts brought in on what were believed to be proper visas, recruited for their specialized skills and experience. The South Korean government, blindsided by the sudden detentions, demanded answers and immediate access to their citizens, launching a flurry of diplomatic activity. Seoul argued these workers were essential to a multi-billion-dollar investment, not criminals, and emphasized the potential damage to ongoing business partnerships. Tense negotiations began, with U.S. officials citing visa irregularities and Koreans insisting any issues were administrative errors, not intentional violations. The fate of the workers hung in the balance as diplomats scrambled for a solution, aware that the outcome could set a precedent for future international cooperation. After days of high-stakes talks, an agreement was finally reached. A chartered flight would return 316 South Koreans and 14 other foreign nationals home, ending a tense standoff that had drawn international attention. The image of exhausted specialists boarding the plane became a symbol of the incident's fallout, capturing the emotional toll on those involved. One worker chose to stay and face legal proceedings, determined to clear his name and challenge the charges in court. But for most, the ordeal ended with their departure, leaving behind uncertainty and disappointment. The episode left deep questions about America's treatment of foreign partners and the reliability of its immigration processes. The investment climate's stability was now in doubt, as companies reconsidered their plans and weighed new risks. The diplomatic rift was patched, but trust was badly shaken, and the scars of the incident would linger for years. The world took note of the risks foreign investors now faced in the U.S., and the story became a cautionary tale for global business. President Trump defended the raid, insisting that all companies must respect U.S. immigration laws, no matter their economic importance. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem echoed this, framing the action as a warning to all foreign investors. Yet, Trump's message was conflicted. He publicly encouraged the detained South Korean workers to stay and finish training their American counterparts. South Korean officials declined, citing the trauma and exhaustion of their citizens. The paradox was clear. The administration wanted strict enforcement, but also needed foreign expertise to realize its manufacturing goals. The refusal exposed the gap between tough rhetoric and the realities of a global workforce. The president's intervention delayed departures but didn't change the outcome. The incident became a test case for whether America First could coexist with international collaboration. The world watched as the U.S. struggled to balance law, labor, and diplomacy. The raid left Hyundai reeling, forcing a temporary shutdown of its operations and causing major supply chain disruptions that rippled through the industry. The chaos went beyond lost production. Hyundai began to question its entire U.S. strategy, wondering if it was sustainable. The company publicly signaled it might scale back or even exit American operations, citing regulatory unpredictability and reputational risk, which could have far-reaching consequences. The $5.5 billion Georgia plan, meant to anchor Hyundai's U.S. expansion, was now a liability, casting a shadow over future investments. Decades of trust and investment were eroded in days, shaking the foundation of Hyundai's American dream. The threat of withdrawal was real. Hyundai's vast American footprint and extensive supplier network hung in the balance, creating uncertainty for thousands of workers. The crisis turned a law enforcement action into a high-stakes economic standoff, with potential global repercussions. The core question: could the U.S. still be trusted as a safe place for global investment, or was this a sign of things to come? Hyundai's next move would set a precedent for other foreign investors, potentially altering the landscape of international business. The stakes were no longer just about visas, they were about the future of American industry and its role in the global market. The world's eyes were on Georgia, waiting for Hyundai's decision, a decision that could redefine economic relations. South Korea's government responded swiftly, warning that the raid could chill future investments. President Lee Jae-myung argued that without predictable access for skilled workers, industrial partnerships were at risk. The timing was especially damaging, coming just months after Korea pledged $350 billion in new U.S. investments. Seoul proposed a new visa category for high-tech workers to prevent future crises. The U.S. appeared open to the idea, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio agreeing to review the proposal. The diplomatic exchange offered hope, but trust remained fragile. Korean companies now demanded concrete assurances their people and investments would be protected. Hyundai's potential pullback threatened thousands of jobs in Georgia and across the Southeast. The $5.5 billion plant was set to create over 8,000 direct jobs and spur a vast ecosystem of suppliers and local businesses. A withdrawal would devastate communities and ripple through the supply chain, jeopardizing even Hyundai's existing U.S. operations. The crisis became a political flashpoint, with critics arguing that unpredictable policies were driving away vital foreign investment. Hyundai's $26 billion U.S. expansion was part of a broader trend of foreign automakers building EV capacity in America. If Hyundai left, it would send a chilling message to other global companies. The risk was no longer hypothetical. The economic fallout was real and immediate. America's reputation as a destination for investment was on the line. The Georgia raid sent shockwaves through boardrooms and ministries worldwide. Allies like Japan and the EU, with major U.S. investments, saw Hyundai's treatment as a warning. The perception of sovereign risk, government actions disrupting business, became a major concern. Automakers and investors began re-evaluating their U.S. strategies, factoring in the risk of similar disruptions. Some considered shifting future projects to more stable countries like Mexico or Canada. The incident threatened to undermine America's efforts to attract foreign capital and technology. Years of trust and goodwill were suddenly at risk. The world wondered if open for business still applied in the U.S. The Hyundai crisis is a lesson in the delicate balance between national policy and global economic reality. The immediate challenge is to restore trust with Hyundai and South Korea, likely requiring real policy changes like a new visa category for skilled workers. America's transition to electric vehicles depends on attracting international companies and their technology. If the U.S. is seen as unstable, that investment will go elsewhere, costing jobs and competitiveness. The chilling effect could spread beyond autos, impacting everything from semiconductors to pharmaceuticals. The Georgia raid is a case study in how domestic policy can have global consequences. For American workers, new manufacturing jobs depend on being a trustworthy partner to global investors. The road ahead demands careful policy, protecting national interest while honoring commitments to allies. The world is watching to see which path the US will choose. The future of American industry hangs in the balance.